Hey guys, I this has been how poker's been going. It's been a little odd. Played a bunch of 10 cent, 25 cent. I may or may not have been playing that session at like 3 a.m. And yeah, I mostly broke even, and then I started playing 25 cent, 50 cent, and ran really well. This is basically all I have to say. You're up to date now. 25 cent, 10 cent, 25 cent rather. Those games are not so great, especially at night here in New Zealand, which I guess is daytime over in like Europe and particularly Russia. It seems like there are a lot of sort of middling Russian regulars who are hard to beat for more than the rake. This is always sort of a sexy spot to think about 4-bit bluffing, but if you're going to do it, it doesn't make much sense to do it with nines. So like ace, okay, with ace king, maybe not against this guy, but generally with ace king I'd be getting it all in, but if I wasn't going to get it all in there with ace king, with a cold 4-bet, it's a really good hand to go for a 4-bet bluff with and just fold to a jam, since you have blockers to their value range. It's a little more exciting if you're doing it against like button 3-bet of the cutoff or a small blind 3-bet of the button, because both of those are more common than a small blind 3-betting the cutoff. Oh, I thought this statistic on Hold'em Manager was pretty good. Where would we find it? Overall? I thought this was pretty sweet. This shows like which hands have been dealt since I started playing again. And so you can see how many I've been getting around as much as is expected. And I've been dealt kings a little more often than expected. Queen jack suited a little less often. Oh, woe is me. Yeah, we're just gonna give up here. I'm gonna be 2-barreling this board a decent amount, but not with this hand in particular. Not even gonna take a stab on the river. We can also see my big blinds won or lost, which I think is more telling. You can see which hands I'm winning the most money with. No surprise, aces and kings doing pretty well. Ace king suited, ace queen suited. And then lighter, I guess, shades of green are winning but a little bit less. Breaking even with nothing. And then the yellows through to the dark red are hands that I'm losing with and how badly I'm losing. So basically I'm losing with all of these hands based just on paying blinds with them. Min raise call, like I can't resist. Sorry, has to be done. Ace 5 offsuit is a super loose hand to be squeezing with here, but it's such a profitable spot. I thought it was interesting to notice that I'm losing, it seems like, with all of these suited aces, but I think it's largely sample size. Not that I necessarily expect to be winning with a hand like ace 6 suited, but I expect to be doing better than I am with, I don't know, 10-4 suited, 10-3 suited. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I seem to be doing better with suited kings so far than suited aces, but a lot of these hands is like I've only been dealt them 100 times, so it's just random. So yeah, the guy asked me to look at his stats, and I'm a nice person, so I'm going to. I thought I'd do it on camera though, so that other people got something out of it too. Hiding his screen name, because I figure, he'd probably appreciate that. I guess it's only his 2+2 username, it's not actually his screen name when he's playing online, so maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal anyway, but He says he's a live player, and he wants to know if he'd get exploited at small stakes no limit, and how he would get exploited. And he says a few things that he thinks about himself. He's a relentless defender of his blinds against late position steals. For example, equally relentless blind stealer, likes post-flop play. Biggest leak is not believing the other guy has anything before I get to my senses. He doesn't like to 3-bet very light or wide, and sometimes flats with strong hands also. But 3-bets when he feels the villain will fold. So he seems to be saying that he's 3-betting more for bluffs than for value. I don't know. I don't really know what to make of that exactly. Floats and steals against continuation bets if people aren't likely to keep firing on the turn, and he keeps firing on the turn against people who he thinks are doing that to him. And we have his stats, two different things of his stats, and a graph, I guess. You can see that he's doing decently well at 10 cent, 25 cent. 6.2 big blinds per 100, and I believe that's poker tracker big blinds, which are actually big bets, not big blinds, which are twice the big blind for some reason. Which just doesn't make sense at all. But yeah, that's a very good win rate. It is only over 10,000 hand samples, so it's hard to say, what his true win rate is, but certainly he's been running very well, and your red line tends to be a lot more consistent than your blue line, and seeing a red line that's like break even or slightly better implies that he's playing pretty well, I think. But yeah, that's just a graph. You can't say too much about anything from there. I'm going to add another table now that this one's filled up. I like to start tables. I feel like chances are good that you end up with, a couple of good spots at the table. Make stuff easier for me. So let's look at all this jazz. Looks like he's played 170 sessions. I assume that that's table sessions. I don't know. It's really irritating that this is split up into no limit and pot limit, which are essentially the exact same thing, but it just gives two different statistics on them. Although it's sort of cool, you can see how much variance there is. Like at pot limit, these are basically the same games, I'll reiterate. So you'd expect his true statistics to be almost identical for both of them. But at pot limit, he's won 17% of hands, which is 3% more than at no limit. It's a pretty huge difference. He's won 70% of his sessions versus a little under 50% at no limit. He's winning at a much, much higher rate. So you can see how the number of hands we've played isn't enough to tell us too much about results, but these statistics should be fairly stable over 10,000 hands. We're winning money at showdown considerably over 50%. Usually if you're too far over 50% winning money at showdown, it's implying actually bad things about your game. It implies that you're not betting the river for value often enough. And that's why you're winning at showdown, because you're checking and then you get to showdown instead of value betting, and sometimes they fold, so you don't see that showdown. But we have such a high win rate that I wonder if that's just part of the variance. It's hard to say. There's aggression frequency. I took a look at these statistics before I started the video, and basically, I think, the aggression frequency, the 3-bet percentage, the VPIP versus preflop raise. These are all wrong. Game theoretically, they're wrong. You want aggression frequency to probably be 4 or higher. Aggression frequency is how often you raise or fold divided by how often you call. So raising or folding raises your aggression frequency, calling lowers it. And we're calling quite a lot, basically. This has a breakdown of it all, and you can see we call 18%, 16%, 15%. And the flop, turn, and river. Lots of checking. Checking doesn't affect aggression factor at all, though. Did he leave? Fair enough. Maybe he looked me up. So yeah, I think I want to make like one big point about the game that this guy's playing. And the point I want to make is all of the stuff he's doing is pretty good, I think. Like, between pretty good and really good. The stuff he's saying about... Okay, the only thing I don't like is defending his blind so wide, but the stuff he's saying about stealing in the late position, about double barreling if he thinks people are floating him, floating if he thinks people aren't going to double barrel, 3-betting in spots where he thinks people are going to fold, all that stuff makes a lot of sense, and all that stuff will make you money. It's also all wrong. Game theoretically, all of that is incorrect. If you're playing against a good opponent, you should never do any of that stuff. So against bad opponents, it works very well because they're making mistakes and you get to exploit them. But if you play against a good player and you try to do these things, you become the one who's making mistakes, because betting twice with a ton of hands because you think people are going to call the flop and then fold the turn is actually very easy to make money against. Somebody just calls the flop and calls the turn, and they make a ton of money against you. 3-betting against people when you think they're going to fold is, okay, well, that works. That works against a whole lot of opponents at much higher stakes than 25 no limit, but theoretically it's wrong. It should be obvious to them that they're in a situation where they look like they're folding a lot, and if you're going to 3-bet them much more often in situations where it looks like that, then it's pretty easy for them to play back at you. So, we're playing wrong, but I think it's fine. And I don't think that at small stakes, like 50 no limit and 100 no limit, you're really gonna run into people who are so good that they're making you suffer for doing that. I don't think it's going to work as well at all, but it'll still probably work. Now, the thing is that you've only been playing for 10,000 hands. If you only play 10,000 hands at any stake, you're not going to get to a point where people, by and large, are recognizing that you're doing these things. I've played 3 million hands in like a 3-year career, so I'm averaging a little under 100,000 hands per month, I guess, which is terrifying when I say it out loud. But there you have it. And yeah, if you want to play professionally or something, I think that's a pretty normal thing to do. And if you're going to play 100,000 hands in a month against a regular pool, which is a lot smaller as you rise up in stakes, there are less regulars at 100 no limit than there are at 25 no limit. Those guys are going to notice that you bet flop and bet turn a bunch against them, and they're going to start to play back. The one thing that I sort of find inexcusable is, okay, there are two things. One is we're defending the blinds too wide. Folding big blind to steal 62%. Which means we're like probably 3-betting 18% and calling 18%, although our 3-bet percentage is very low. So I assume we're like calling 30% and 3-betting 8%, maybe. Something like that. That's just very bad. Against good players, you're going to lose a lot of money doing that. And, you know, you seem to be a good post-flop player, so it's working for you, but even if you're a good post-flop player, if the other guy is too, you're going to lose a bunch of money defending your big blind that wide. You can't be a good enough player that defending your big blind that wide against a good player is not losing you tons of money. Yeah, the other thing is the 3-bet percentage is very low. You want a 3-bet percentage that's like 6% to 8% probably in NLHE Hold'em, and it's just mathematical. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying, that you're outplaying people post-flop, and so you want to call a lot and play post-flop, and of course, and that's working so far. But as you get to a point where you're playing against good opponents, you're just making a mistake. It's just like a fundamental rule of NLHE Hold'em that you want to be able to put money in the pot with your good hands, and you want to be able to bluff with your bad hands. And if you're not doing one of those things, the other thing stops working. And, I mean, here, pre-flop, you're doing neither. By 3-betting so little, you're giving up an opportunity pre-flop both to put money into the pot with your good hands and bluff with bad hands. Which, you know, having that opportunity just makes you more money. And, yeah, I would say at 25 no limit, playing as few hands as you are, that you could 3-bet a lot more and still call with your good hands to play post-flop. I think you could probably 3-bet twice as much without actually 3-betting any more hands for value, and just be getting, you know, money out of people when they fold. Because there are lots of positions where you can 3-bet just as a bluff profitably. And 3-betting more like that is going to make it so people stack off lighter against you, which is, you know, going to give you a lot more money when you 3-bet with pocket aces. I think another thing about calling to play post-flop with good hands, I don't know if you mean like with queens or ace-king, which is totally fine, and you should do that in a lot of situations, like game theoretically it's correct. But if you're doing it with aces, and to a lesser extent kings, you can call with kings in some spots. But if you're doing it with aces for like anything more than 5 or 10% of the time, maybe 10% of the time, probably if you're doing it with aces more than 5% of the time, you're just giving away so much money. If you like do the math on a pretty normal range of hands and how an opponent will play them pre-flop, 3-betting aces I think is usually worth 18 big blinds or something. On average, you're making 18 big blinds by 3-betting aces. And humans are a lot worse at math than machines are, especially when humans are like doing the math anecdotally by looking at what happens when they 3-bet aces, and they're like, oh, but he always folds, and it's lame. And then when they get all in against someone, they only remember the times that they were against kings and he hit a king on the river, and so on. But in actuality, 3-betting aces makes you a hell of a lot of money, and probably more than you're making post-flop by calling them. So, yeah. Yeah, those are the two things I wanted to say. Oh, basically, post-flop with the aggression factor, it's just the same thing. The low aggression factor implies to me that you're calling a ton, seeing later streets, and that's working out for you because people are making mistakes on later streets against you. Probably a lot of mistakes. But as you start to play against good players who are capable of hand reading better and have a better understanding of how to balance their 2-barreling and 3-barreling ranges, you're going to stop being able to make all that money post-flop. And the fact that you're giving up, once again, by failing to raise, you're giving up the opportunity to put money into the pot with good hands and giving up the opportunity to bluff with bad hands. That's just going to, hamper your maximum possible win rate. So that's what I had to say about that. Hopefully I didn't sound too grumpy or anything. I worry that I sound grumpy. I'm giving advice a lot. Alright, somebody's taking position on me. He's like, oh, look at this guy. I've never seen him before. Probably a good spot. Let's see if he stays. Since he's sitting, we can open another heads-up table. I think you can only be sitting at one at a time now. Oh wow, there are tons of people sitting at heads-up tables. Maybe we'll just join some that are already going then. I wonder if they're actually sitting in or if they're sitting out at heads-up tables. I don't know. This guy seems sort of bad, so let's sit with him. And yeah, let's get up to 4 tables. It'll be hectic until they fill up. Notice that apparently I was playing this table earlier. What? Am I that scary, guys? All 3 of them just insta-left as I sat down. It's not because of me at all. They all were planning to leave, I guess, but that was just sort of amazing. You want to sit to the left of the worst player at the table, basically. So when this guy, I don't consider that guy to be so bad that I really want to have position on him. I don't think he's super good, that's why I chose him to sit with. On the other hand, we're gonna 4-bet with ace-8 offsuit. So I sat with 4 empty seats to my right, basically, so they could fill up with bad players, and here I'm actually waiting to see if any of these guys are making terrible plays, and if they are, I'm going to sit to their left, but it doesn't really look like any of them are. Basic way that you can recognize when somebody's a poor player is their stack size. Somebody has around 50 big blinds is pretty likely to be a poor player. Also, someone who has $44 at a $50 table, because most of the regulars have auto top up. You see, whenever me or him go under $50, our stack automatically pops back up to 50. Unfortunately, it comes out of our account balance. PokerStars doesn't just do that for you for free. That'd be nice, right? But a lot of the recreational players don't have that set up, so if they have sort of a weird stack size, it implies that they, are not regulars in the game. I'm sort of surprised that he called out a position and folded to 1-bet on that board. That implies that he's calling out a position, with what? Because I expect king high to float, I expect queen high to float a decent amount, I'm opening 100% of hands or something. It's a super dry board. That's a really huge 4-bet size by him. It's just wasting a lot of money to 4-bet that big. I think I 4-bet to 850 in the same situation. There's just no reason to 4-bet that big Wastes all this money when you're bluffing and I come back over the top, which I'm doing fairly often, heads up. Especially against this guy who's 3-bet 33% of the time so far. But yeah, it looks like we're playing at least 3-handed on all the tables now. So it's been a week or something since I made the last video. I don't really remember what I was last talking about, but I assume we're, slogging through balance and pre-flop play and hand reading and stuff, so I'm gonna keep on going on that. Hopefully I don't try to say something insightful, quoting some nebulous author of some work and end up saying exactly the same thing that I did last week. It would make me probably sound less erudite if the weird authors that I cited were always the same and the point that I cited from them was also always the same. Erudite is a cool word though, so at least I have that going for me. I'm gonna 3-bet. King 4 offsuit I don't think is quite good enough to call in position. Weird that he insta-calls, cause calling is probably the worst play. So yeah, I guess. I just see that to make him fold junk, and potentially I can call against 10-9 or Queen 10 or something on the river. Or maybe he just won't bet it, but yeah, I'm just giving up now. It's a jack. Oh, he's king high. That was really close to working out, but unfortunately he ended up having a slightly better hand than me. I assume this guy seems terrible, so I assume he plays something like 10-9 or Queen 10 the same way, in which case I just got value on the flop. So let's talk about something different. No, let's not. Change my mind. I was going to talk about how important it is to think critically about what you read. In the days of 24-hour news networks, but the subject just depresses me. This is a really weird spot with queens, because against a 40 big blind stack, it's actually, believe it or not, sort of dodgy to get it all in. It's a really difficult stack size to get all in against, because against a 100 big blind stack, they're going to 4-bet bluff a decent amount, and you can jam and they'll fold sometimes. So the fact that sometimes you jam and run into aces doesn't matter quite so much, because a lot of the time you jam and they fold. But against a 40 big blind stack, if you 3-bet and they 4-bet, they're basically always going all in. And this is fascinating, so we're going to talk about this particular spot for a little bit. The way that the stack sizes work after you 3-bet, their jam all in is giving you actually pretty poor odds to call. You're going to be calling around 15 to win 40, playing heads up again. That's weird, but fair enough. God, this guy likes to 3-bet. So I'm going to start tightening up my button opening range. Probably would still open 9-5 offsuit just barely. I'm not going to just randomly 4-bet with hands that make no sense to 4-bet with, but if I have an offsuit ace or king, probably consider it. This is another sort of interesting spot to consider donk betting. It just hits my range so well that it's a board that it makes sense to have a donk betting range on. I'm actually going to do it. I really like it. He'll probably just fold, unfortunately. I'm sort of leveling myself here. Like, game theoretically, I think I should have a donk betting range there. And now he's gone? Oh man. And I can't even look at the last hand, because he's gone. Oh, I managed to hack the software to get into it. No, I didn't. What? Why is that all the way back there? That's bizarro. Anyway, on a board that's Queen, Jack, 8, Rainbow, or whatever it was, when I call in the big blind, I have, you know, a much tighter range than he has for opening on the button. And that tighter range is going to feature a much greater percentage of Broadway types of cards which connect with that board in a good way. So it makes a lot of sense for me to just donk bet 100% there. My range is just a lot stronger than his, and the theoretical reason that we bet is that our range is stronger. I may never have, like, said that before. It's that, like, we can have the strongest hands, or something like that. There's also merit to just checking there, of course. So he checked back with 10s. This guy's defending his big blind. He seems like a reasonable player, and I don't know, maybe a c-bet with 10s was better, actually. Probably a c-bet with 10s was much better. But I decided to go for delayed c-bet, and when the king comes on the turn and he bets into me, I think it's a reasonable time to fold. There isn't that much that he can bluff with. This is not very good. Never seen him raise a c-bet before. There's no real reason to go crazy here. I think I can fish tag a guy who's 39-15. Anyway, again, this is sort of the same principle as why I was donk betting down here. When he calls here, I think his range is a little bit tighter than mine. Well, probably quite a bit tighter than mine. And I probably should have just bet the flop, but after the turn comes and a king hits, not only does he not have many hands that are nothing here for him to bluff with, like I suppose he can have 10-9 suited, ace-queen, probably turns into a bluff, something like that. But most of his hands are like a pair of some sort, and I'd expect him to just check more with them. So I expect him to be value betting a pretty decent, whoa, fish tag. Expect him to be value betting a pretty decent amount of the time that he's batting here. And it's totally fine for me to fold 10s because of the hands that I'm checking back on this flop. Like, I can have 10s and I can have ace-king, and yeah, that's sort of the hands that I'm checking back. Just hands which are, like, not folding out many hands which are better as a bluff and don't get called by many hands which are worse. And the fact that the king came on the turn means that, you know, some of those hands are now top pair. So I can call with the top pair hands and fold the hands that are not, and not really worry too much about him just exploiting me a ton by bluffing and the like. I'm oversimplifying, but that's sort of the theory going through my head. The tables seem to be very good right now. Maybe that's because I started my own. I don't know, guys. Oh, that's sort of depressing. Anyway, if you're going to start tables and you figure you can start them just by sitting at the table and then sitting out until lots of other people join, I feel like it's fairly commonly accepted that the recreational players that you ideally want to be playing with, don't really want to sit down at a table where everybody's sitting out. So they're gonna go sit at the table with the people who are actually playing, and you're not gonna get to play against them. I don't know if these guys are even here. They may just not be here, and that's why they're sitting out. This guy looks like, the goal. Man, it feels so predatory sometimes when I talk about table selection and what have you. But that's sort of the game, isn't it? I have to say, the longer I've played poker, maybe this is like because of self-serving deception, but I don't really think so. The longer I've played poker, the more I've liked it. Like, when I started playing poker, it was sort of, Certainly before I started playing poker, I was not super interested. I was like, really? Poker? Like, that's an interesting thing to do with your entire life. Except not. But then I actually started playing poker, and at that point I was like, okay, this is, a good way to make money, but I don't like it that much. I don't think it's terribly, good for society that I'm doing it or anything. And the longer I've played poker, again, this may be totally self-serving, but I really feel like poker is extremely valuable to modern society. Poker players, a lot of the people I've met playing higher stakes poker are extremely, extremely heavily benefited from their experience playing poker. And not just because they've taken other people's money and now they have it, but the way that it allows them to think about life and risk, I think allows them to make some pretty awesome life decisions, and a lot of them have life experiences which people who do not play poker just maybe they wouldn't even be available, but also I don't think they would really go for it. I think poker connects you internationally with a lot of people through the internet and gives you self-sufficiency and self-confidence and good decision-making abilities, and all of that adds up to creating a lot of people who are pretty awesome, going all over the world, doing awesome things. Yeah. So, I sort of did an about-face on the whole poker front. And I haven't been playing poker for a year, so it's not like during all of that time I had much reason to think poker was awesome. But I did. Maybe I missed it. Yeah. Reading threads on poker forums, though, some of those threads, which are not about poker at all, have some of the coolest, most unique and grounded, I want to say, insight of, any threads that I've read on the internet, and, conversations that I've had. And just, times that I've hung out with other poker players have been very cool, and yeah, so. That's, of course, talking about the higher stakes sort of poker players. I think a lot of people just get involved in the grind and don't take as well to the theoretical aspect of it and the applications for learning about the world. I don't know. Just babbling. They have pocket aces, and those guys both have pink tags. Which means, by the way, that they probably have tons of fours in their range. But they also have, tons of other stuff. So I'm gonna bet, and then I'm gonna bet more. If I bet and get raised here, I'm just gonna fold, because this guy's, okay, unbelievably passive and call-y. If I get raised, I expect it to like always be pocket sixes or a flush. I'm gonna check fold, and honestly expect it to check through and I win a lot. Hey-oh, called it, right? Because this is not a player who I need to worry about bluffing me. Whoa! It's like everything that happens, I like say something, I just say it a second before it does. I'm in the zone here. Yeah, like, as you can see, this player called me twice with a terrible hand. They had a gut shot. A 5 would have made a straight. And then didn't bother bluffing on the 4 flush board where, I mean, I was folding after I checked there something like 100% against this player, but fortunately they don't know that. How do you like my 5 tabling setup? It's pretty interesting geometry, huh? I tried doing a recording. I forget if it may have been at 25 no limit. I tried to do a recording and it didn't end up recording well, but I was playing a hand against a guy and the board was 9-5 deuce or something with 2 diamonds. This is weird, because I mean, I've only seen 14 hands against the guy, but it's weird when someone who's 54-0 raises pre-flop. Anyway, it was like 9-5 deuce, diamond, diamond, and the turn was jack of diamonds, and the river was king of diamonds, maybe? Something of diamonds. And I just called his hand exactly. Pocket sevens with a diamond. And it was awesome. And then I couldn't use the video, so none of you will ever get to see it. It was not a spot where, like, he could only have a couple of hands rationally either. It was a spot where, like, I bet the flop and then checked the turn and river. I bet there for value with ace-king. I don't know, maybe you guys are thinking, oh great, we can get him to fold and take down the pot, but I'm pretty disappointed that I go to fold there. I expect when I get called for him to have, like, jack 10, and think that the straight's gonna come. And, well, if king and then ace come, I will lose half of my money, but most of the time that he calls with jack 10 there, I'm, you know, gonna win the pot. And yeah, so this is a weird spot where if the guy's aggressive, and I don't know much about him, he's 3-bet before, he may be just gonna check raise me. If I knew the guy was aggressive, I maybe would check back here. I don't know, it's a weird spot, because there are lots of worse hands that I get called by, which are now beating me, but on the flop, there were a lot of worse hands that I get called by, stuff like queen, jack, queen 10, king, jack, some sorts of hard draws. However, he should probably, given his range in the board, be check raising those, sort of as bluffs. It's like, it's a semi-bluff, I guess, but largely it's because I think he should be check raising just tons and tons and tons of hands on this board. And it should be really profitable for him. So, given that, if I was playing against an aggressive player who I thought was going to do that, I think I maybe have to check back with ace-5 suited there. Like, basically his range is, whoops, basically I think his range is stronger than mine on that board. think his range is stronger than mine, but then I'm going to continuation bet a ton, and so he'll have a really profitable check raise and a really sensible one. The reason I think his range is stronger than mine is obviously I can have king queen, I can have all of the king queens, and that hand is the nuts. Heyo. And it's easier for me to have aces than him. In fact, it would be really surprising if he had aces. But his range is just a lot tighter when he calls in the big blind than when I open here. And so, despite the fact that I can have all the king queens and I can have aces, which he probably can't, he can have all the king queens, he can have jacks, he can have tens, he can have jack 10 probably. Just 3-bet this guy. I guess it's good enough to call. We know a little bit about him, and he seems to not c-bet all the time post-flop. If I knew nothing about a player, I'm not sure that ace-queen suited would actually be a profitable call here. Anyway, we're going to have to fold it looks like. So yeah. And he just has less hands that didn't hit. I don't think he should have pocket sixes and pocket sevens, although maybe he does. That's sort of why I c-bet, I guess, with a lot of hands. You don't default something like that. I don't know, guys. The reason ace-queen suited is not a great call there, although I think it's still profitable, so I did it, is that these guys behind can squeeze and I have to fold my hand. And this guy's range opening under the gun is just very strong, and ace-queen doesn't do all that well against it. Does fine against it, but not super amazingly. I'm gonna make a loose-ish open here, maybe. Let's look at the table. 1, 2, tie cut, yeah. Not a super standard open. In fact, it may still be wrong, because 10-9 suited is not a great hand to play against weak players, since a lot of the value of 10-9 suited comes in finding profitable bluffing opportunities. And bluffing against people who never fold is, well, often it ends up actually being value betting. Anyway, that obviously didn't work out so well. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this guy sticks it in. I don't think this guy's 3-betting weak at all, because, yeah, this guy's going to stick it in a lot here. So, I'm totally fine with folding 10-9 suited. Whatevs. Yeah. Anyways, nice to be chatting with you guys. Conversation's a little one-sided. Gone for 15 minutes, I guess, so I should really wind it up, but I'm having fun. Don't want to. I have no idea whether I'm winning or losing on the session. I just realized, like, usually I at least have some idea, but I really have no idea. I only have $50 on a lot of tables. That one and that one. Okay, I guess I'm up on 2 tables. Ostensibly, if that's even the right word to use. I'm gonna think of some author to leave you with a wisdom from, and then I'm gonna close this down. I'm actually gonna stay on the tables and keep playing. This guy is a 70-20. I have 10 high. Let's wait until the turn. Sweet. Sometimes I like to let them check back, because, shit. Oh, the problem with having 10 high here is, like, he's not folding that many hands, but, God, that was the fear. The problem is, of course, that he can have hands which he probably actually folds to a river bet there, which still beat me. Like, if I had ace high, I would just not even consider bluffing here, because I don't think he folds anything that is ahead of me. When I have 10 high, I have to sort of consider it. Against someone I knew something about, I'd defend here. When I know absolutely nothing about him, I'm not interested in playing post-flop out of position. Even with a pretty hand like King Jack suited. I'm often going to be like calling the 3-bet and then donk betting as a means to defending. Okay, so I just finished a book about the Crusades. And this isn't exactly wisdom or anything, but I thought it was interesting that the word crusader like literally comes from a French phrase meaning someone bearing the cross, and the Crusades were initially, oh my god, I may not be able to say this because, whoa, every table at once. The Crusades were initially extremely religious sorts of experiences, like they were religious pilgrimages. And the point was to cleanse your soul. That's why people went and fought in the Crusades, to capture Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was the target. And it was the target because it was, you know, a holy city, not because of political or economic reasons. This started to change like a little bit even as the Crusades were happening, which was like 1099 through to, I don't know, I guess they kept happening, but the big crusading era sort of ended 1200 and something. I don't think I can fold 10s here, can I? Even knowing nothing about a guy. Probably he c-bets here, and then I'm just going to fold. Feels gross though. Does feel gross. I could call once. Have to win like 30% of the time. I don't think I do. So yeah, the word crusade, okay, and jihad, which is sort of the Islamic response to the crusade, also began as an extremely devotional word, and people on jihad were often thought of as fighting an internal battle, very largely, against sin, like their own sin. And the word crusade basically got completely destroyed and reappropriated for European imperialism. Europeans decided in like around 1800 or something that, you know, going and conquering India and ruling over the people there was morally justifiable because it was like the Crusades to conquer Jerusalem, which were sanctioned by the church. And, you know, that's interesting, and I'm not going to try to say that that was or wasn't right, although I think most people in the modern world would say that it's not. But it's certainly not what the Crusades were actually like at all. A lot of Crusaders like went to the Middle East and then went home and fought for maybe a year, because that was what they were interested in doing. They wanted to seek an indulgence from the church to have their sins forgiven. They weren't like trying to conquer the Middle East and imperialize it. So that's just a complete, well, not complete, but it's a very large bastardization of the term. Value betting twice with a pair of 2s against him. Oh shit, now I have a pair of 9s. Are you kidding, son? You're not gonna bluff. That's the problem. Maybe you'll call me with ace high. Probably call me with a pair of 5s. 5 king. King 5 of clubs. Give me a call. Okay, that sucks. I'm not gonna entertain the idea of calling here against this player. He's shown to be extremely passive. Like, I'm getting such good odds. 370 to win 1840. I need to be good 1 in 5 times. But everything we've seen about him just implies that he will never ever do this as a bluff. So, yeah. If he is, you know, bluffing 0% of the time, I'm probably not going to win 1/5 of the time when I call there. Anyway, the thing that I found really interesting is that the word jihad didn't ever really change in the same way that crusade did for imperialism. And so we still think of crusade and jihad as very much being like cross-cultural synonyms, I guess. They're not actually synonyms because they're different religions or something, I don't know, but when you hear about Osama bin Laden committing to a jihad, you think that it's like when G-Dub talks about how he's going to crusade in the Middle East to conquer Iraq, and in actuality the words mean very different things when the two people say those things. The guy talking about a jihad is talking about sort of spiritual experience, spiritual warfare, and we are talking about going there and conquering and occupying their nation. And, you know, it has almost nothing to do with spirituality. I thought that was interesting. And yeah, I'm going to play this last hand, which is already off to sort of a weird start, because this guy plays 9-8 and just raised to 4 big blinds, which is really big. But we'll see what happens. He opens King-Jack suited from the cutoff. We've seen it before. When he checks to me on this board, I don't think he's getting tricky that often. I expect him just to be giving up a lot. Like, it looks like a board that hits me pretty well, and if he's the sort of guy who plays extremely tight, okay, I have to play one more hand. If he's the sort of guy who plays extremely tight, he's not really thinking about, like, getting me off my hands somehow. Maybe I missed the board. Maybe we can see that. And like, he's probably just thinking I have pocket sixes on this board. It's really easy for him to have hit it. I fold. And so, I think betting a third of the pot there to let him fold pocket sixes makes a lot of sense. Probably I'd win the pot just as easily if I checked back and let him see a turn. But, yeah. This is not a spot where kings are going to actually be like a huge equity favorite terribly often. Still think it's a good spot for continuation bet. But yeah, 3 callers on that board. And we got dealt aces against a fish. So I just am running way too hot to ever actually end this video, which I apologize for. Oh, but he folded. Now I'm running terribly. This guy doesn't even look like he's... I think I labeled him wrong. Well, he probably did something terrible, so I labeled him as a fish, but then it turned out that for the most part he's pretty normal. Yeah. Short stacking sort of guy. I don't know. I don't think calling there is that great. Alright, well, we're gonna fold, and that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry I randomly started talking about the Crusades. See you around. Oh, I should say, I'm gonna do another video of 15-minute limit after I've played like 15,000 hands of it or something. I've only played a couple of hundred at this point. But yeah, I think it will be good to do that. As you saw, we were not doing well. We were like 65% or something against king jack suited, and then like all terrible shape against queen 10. So we were certainly not doing super great with kings on that board. See you guys around. Bye.